All right, this is episode 12 with Matt Ferrone, the art of self-improvement, and this is a part one of it because this episode actually went an hour and 30 minutes long. I don't want the episodes to go that long. I think if they go over an hour and 15 minutes, they're going to be two parts. That's just my thing. I think over an hour and 30 minutes is just or hour 15 minutes is just a little bit too long to keep engaged for the whole time. So splitting this one into two. For the first part of the episode, we dive into his self-improvement journey, how it started. We dive into some deep talks, and then I address kind of where the process is going. The last couple episodes, some realizations I had and some breakthroughs. So tune into part one. Let's get it. I'm your host, Paul McCarran, and the whole thing with the process, it's the process of me gaining knowledge and gaining wisdom. My guests are going to provide the knowledge and the wisdom, and I'm doing work at the same time to gain knowledge and wisdom. Process of 2 to 3 years down the line, now I'm providing knowledge and wisdom along with the guests. Welcome to Process Podcast. Let's go. We're back on the process. We got my guy Matt, and we got Finn. We got Matt's dog in here with us, so we're kicking it off. If you hear any barks or something, that's what it is. But so first time we've had two guests on the pod, probably one of the only times. But we got Matt coming in, Matt Ferrone. So one of my buddies, I actually met him through work. We were both server assistants, and we went to the gym one day, and we're both on this path of self-improvement and growing closer to the Lord as well. So super excited to talk to him today, kind of pick his brain. He's been really growing and has a gift, which we can get into in a little bit. But what did that process kind of look like starting out, and why did you get into self-improvement?
Yeah, so appreciate the introduction. So I was an athlete all my life. I grew up playing tons of sports, but I ended up finishing high school playing soccer, basketball, and lacrosse. And so my entire life was just sports, and then I was big into video games as well. And then when I left for college, that high school sports experience was, left in the past. And coming to school, it felt like such a void. And I felt like something was missing in my life. And then I got into I went down a whole YouTube rabbit hole, and I got into the self-improvement journey because there'd be people that I saw that were doing really cool things with their lives. And they recommended all these books that would help them get to where they were. And so I started going into my own journey, reading these books and starting to dive in deeper and deeper. And I just became obsessed with just, learning about this whole, new experience. It was like something unlocked in my brain. It felt like an awakening where, these books helped me learn more about myself than I ever could.
Yeah, it was like you unlocked the unlimited wisdom that was like lies in books and lies in YouTube videos, and from gaining knowledge from other people, and you had realized how much there was out there that you didn't know yet, and it started to kind of transform your life. Get a little closer to the mic when you speak. Okay. But so basically you started this journey of self-improvement, and I guess that was when you recognized, man, I'm living this life, and my identity in a sense of the person that I played as sports kind of got ripped away from me. But now this whole vast new thing of opened up my mind that I know nothing. And you got a little taste of do you remember the first taste of I know something? Was it like YouTube? Was it a book? Was it a certain specific thing that you can remember, that turning point?
It was the first book that I've ever read that kind of launched me in my self-improvement journey was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And that really flipped the switch about the difference that I've seen between, the high performers of this world, the people that make something for themselves and have a different energy, and then the other end of the spectrum, the people who play that victim mindset. And it's all about the power.
Here we go.
Yeah. First one of many. All about the power of the mind, and how people like you and me, the people, the entrepreneurs of this world, the people who really go out and create something, they have a different mindset compared to the poor people. And it just really shaped my belief, and it made me think about my experience when I was an athlete. And I was like, dude, if I had this mindset when I was in high school, when I was an athlete, my experience would have been so much different. It would have been so much better. I would have been much more confident. I would have been like taking things in my own hands.
Yeah, so the two mindsets I can really kind of attribute those, like that pattern of thinking to, are one, like abundance versus scarcity, I would say, is one that, like, if you're watching this, abundance is a mindset that, like, there's a lot to go around. So just because someone else has money doesn't mean you can't have money. You can both have money, and there's like just so much money to go around in the world. Whereas scarcity mindset is, if someone else is getting like likes on Instagram, then I can't get likes on Instagram, and vice versa. But I see the world as like an abundance mindset, and so do all the people most people who are successful are going to see it as an abundance mindset. And that's the people you want to be around, because it's very hard to be around scarcity mindset people, because at the end of the day, they're not going to want to see you win. Because if they're based in a scarcity-rooted mindset, then they're going to be like, if Palmer wins, even though he's my friend, then I can't win as well. So that's a very hard mindset to grow. And like at the end of the day, I've noticed it's abundance. Like it is an abundance world if you see it in an abundance way. And then the other two mindsets I'll attribute to the self-improvement, self-growth thing, where I say most people have it, or people who live a fulfilled life, a purposeful life, are going to live in an internal locus of control, so that they can control the things that act on them. And so that's going to be like looking at the things that you like. There are things we can't control in life, but you don't pay attention to those as much as you do to the things you can control. Like the things you can control are how do I react to the situation? How do I think about this situation? Versus the external locus of control is people who are focused on the election and how that's going to affect their money, versus the people with internal they don't focus on the election. It's like, whatever end result, I know I'm going to make this happen. And like, oh, the inputs are that I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to work on my business, no matter if Donald Trump wins or President Biden wins, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so I would say those are two of the big mindsets. And obviously you could hear Finn was getting pretty excited about hearing about the self-improvement journey. But also I talked to Matt a little bit before the podcast. We were in a Bible study together, Bible study that, kind of the Lord put on my mind, and I kind of sparked, and we're up to like 8 or 9 guys on and off. People have moved and stuff, but it's been amazing. And so I was sharing with them a little bit last night where the process is going. So I asked Matt if I could kind of share that on this episode. So I'm going to dive into that before we dive back into his self-improvement journey, starting off with the Think and Grow Rich. But yeah, so the process, I've been kind of going through some reflections, and we had a revival nights at our church last week, Monday through Thursday night, on top of a service Sunday morning, and just had some like really cool realizations and kind of just breakthroughs with my, like, how I look at things, convicted of some different things. And I was like, man, I've really given my life to God in like all areas. And then I almost felt some conviction, like, no, you haven't, not quite yet. And so that was when I was like, man, what, like, what am I missing? So I was, I'd given my finances, I'd given relationships, I was giving time, right? But it wasn't all my time, and it wasn't the first of my time. And so that's when I was really made the decision, like, man, I was still focused on, I want the podcast to be successful. I can't miss a week. And I was all wrapped up in all these small details of the process and of life and of content and all these things, me trying to work and pull the strings. And when I felt that conviction of like, well, I had like a little breakthrough at the service, and I was like, man, I got to make like the Lord first in everything. And so I had this realization, and I was like, okay, well, first I got to start spending the first intentional part of my day, getting in the Word, getting rooted, getting in prayer. And so that's when I realized everything else will follow. And I had submitted everything. This was all kind of at once. So realizing I've submitted everything to the Lord, but maybe not quite yet. So I was like, okay, now it's time. Now it's everything. So I was getting to the point where I'd submitted the process too, but I was still prioritizing it on the schedule before the time with the Lord. So now I was like, okay, first 2 hours of the day, 10% of the day, the goal, I'm not perfect, but is to spend time with the Lord. And I was like, man, that's what I need. And so I was like, first, no matter what, it's like I'm spending time with the Lord. I'm not perfect, so I give myself grace if I don't. But prioritizing that time, and then everything else that I need to work on will fall into place in the schedule later in the day. So the process, the podcast, like whatever, the guests, like God will provide the guests that are to come on, and He'll push the episodes to the people that it means to be pushed to. So I came to that realization. I was like, wow. And I'm going to share a cool story about that this week. And then the second realization was this process is, it's a self-improvement podcast. But I was really like felt like, man, I really want to share the gospel even more and share the life of Jesus. Like, and as I'm growing and learning more about the word myself, and so sorry, I'm yapping a little bit, but
your thing.
But he heard a little bit about this yesterday. I was like, I really just want to spread the gospel and, the truth to everyone. And I feel like in this revival nights, I had a night where, I don't know, I've been praying about it a lot. And so basically I was like, man, the process is the way. It's like what God's called me to do. And like, I want it to be not just a self-improvement podcast, but a self-improvement podcast based on biblical principles. And I was like, man. And so that's like the difference between mentorship and discipleship. Is mentorship is just, guidance in the family and like your life and your finances. But discipleship is guidance and all those different things. It's mentorship based on biblical principles, which is huge. And so that's kind of like applying it to the podcast. It was self-improvement, but now it's a self-improvement podcast implementing the biblical principles. Whether it's a spiritual or non-spiritual guest, the goal is to be able to share the word, share the truth, and apply it to the situations that are at hand, or like conversations at hand. So that's where we're going. And then I'll let Mac put in a little word, give myself a breath, and but and then I'll share the cool breakthroughs this week that I had. Yeah,
dude, I love that. He was explaining to me that earlier, and it made me think of a part of the gospel where Christ talks about building a foundation on the sand versus on the rock.
Ooh, Matthew 7:24 through 27.
Exactly. Yeah. So establishing, this podcast on biblical principles, if we look at it on a different perspective, somebody who doesn't have, who built something who doesn't have deeply rooted principles in the Bible, if you look at it as what Christ talks about, where a house is built on sand without a proper foundation, when hardship comes, when the rain comes, when the snow, the hail, that house falls apart, versus establishing this on biblical hard-rooted principles is like building a house on the rock, where it's extremely firm foundation, and when all hardships come, rain, snow, any type of difficulty, we all have that root and that foundation on the word to rely on through anything that we have in life. Yeah,
on the word and on Christ. And wow, that was said actually perfectly. And I didn't relate to that scripture at all, but thinking about that, man, like in podcasts, so many people start podcasts and so little make it. I think it's like 21 episodes, like less than 1% make it past 21 episodes. And really it's like, well, starting things is easy. Finishing things is biblical. We can look throughout the Bible where the Lord calls many people to finish things. Noah finished the ark when God called him to do that. There's a couple different examples. Moses helped finish the tabernacle. All these different experiences in the Bible, stories of these people who God called them to do something and they finished the work that God called them to do. It's like, so starting this is easy, but rooting this podcast on biblical principles is going to make it, the rock on the solid ground. So like when the hard times come or when I don't have a guest for many episodes, that's what I'm like, man, I'm doing this, and I can refer to that scripture where God calls us to finish the works, because starting it is easy. And I talked about that in starting new things, the last podcast, a couple of podcasts ago that went out. But the breakthrough I'll kind of share is, so, this is kind of something that I've had this realization this week. I've shot a couple episodes. So episode 9, episode 10, you might have seen a little bit different of a start to the episode and more relaxed. So that's the last thing, is I want to make the episodes a little bit more just relaxed, not as serious, man, and just be able to be me on this podcast and not keep it so structured interview, but just share my authentic self, because that's what God's called me to do, is just be me. And so I don't want to start it out this certain way or have to do this certain way or have this certain discussion. It's like, I want to just talk to the person across the table. And like in this case, I'm so blessed to have Matt and that he's let me yap this long about this thing. But the last thing was, I had a couple guests get sick, or I didn't have guests for a couple weeks. And when I really submitted everything to the Lord and I was like, I'm spending time with him first, I had 3 guests. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Today's Thursday with Matt, which will be going out in a few weeks when you see this. But then on top of that, I had 2 episodes shot before that gave me ideas that they're going to be episodes too. So in the time I submitted everything to the Lord, started spending my time with him first, 5 episodes in 1 week, versus where I couldn't get a guest on for 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And it's like, that's crazy. So Thanks for letting me share that. But yeah, just kind of be there's no like structure. It's an interview structure, self-improvement structure, but it's just being more authentically me, not having to start it a certain way or have to confide to all these regulations, just be me. So
Dude,
thank you, Matt, for letting me.
Dude, I love it so much because on his original intros, he talked about how he would use the guest's wisdom, to kind of, gain experience from them. And then as you grow in your faith and your wisdom, you would speak from that. And it's amazing to see that transition now about, you're not just asking for the guest wisdom, you're also sharing your wisdom too. So it makes it more or less like of a Q&A, like what can I learn from you? And more so like, how can we give the listener as much wisdom as possible through your wisdom as much as the guests.
Ooh, I love that. And it's like sometimes, I'm only 22, so I was like, I don't have the wisdom, I'm 23 now, but I don't have the wisdom or the knowledge. And that's why I was kind of coming like, from the guest knowledge. And I met a guy named David Solomon actually at the coffee shop yesterday. And he was an amazing guy. But basically he said, God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Yeah, God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. So, man, I might not feel qualified to hop on this podcast and share some of my knowledge yet, but it's like, man, God qualifies me, and he when he called me. So it's like I can share my knowledge, share my wisdom. So I appreciate you saying that. And so I want to dive into some scripture a little bit right now. And so Romans 12 is something I've been kind of diving into. And so Romans 12:6 talks about we have different gifts, each of us. According to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is serving, then serve. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is to give, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. And so Matt has a couple gifts that I've noticed in my life. And I would say his gift that we're going to dive into, and he's kind of realized lately that he wants to work his life around, is teaching. So he loves to teach. And not only that, but he has an amazing memory from all these books he's read throughout his life, or these last 4 years, all this self-improvement journey. We'll be in this Bible study. He'll pull up books and authors' names and quotes and all these things. So I was like, man, you're like really good at that. But also his gift is teaching. And so I want to dive into how you realized that was one of your gifts, and now I think you're pursuing that more than you've ever known because now you see it.
Yeah, so it's crazy because something that I've always thought was a weird quirk that I had, but it turned out into it led diving deeper into wisdom. I've learned that the gifts that we have stem from the weird quirks that we do, the authentic versions of ourselves. So when I would be alone, I would always talk to myself in the mirror. I would always, when I would watch a YouTube video or I would, read a book, I would almost act like the person in the mirror is another person that I'd be talking to. And I would almost explain those concepts to myself. And it wouldn't matter if, I was a 15-year-old in high school or 20-something-year-old in college. It would just be something that I would do, and I found it like a very personal thing. And I noticed that I felt like I was very good at explaining concepts or distilling those. And I almost think dude, what if I was a teacher? I feel like I'd be such a good teacher. But I want to impact more people than just 20-something students in a classroom. I want to affect people on a greater scale. And the power of the internet is incredible because it allows you not to talk to just a handful of people, but thousands of people, millions of people all throughout the world. And I learned this gift from the Bible study from Palmer and our friend Ethan. I never really occurred to me that I, would bring that up. It would just be stuff that I had on the top of my mind because I would be, so obsessed in the learning, and just personal development was something that I found so incredibly fascinating. It was just, I'd just be talking about stuff that I'm interested in. And I think that's,
it's the stuff you're passionate in, it just comes up. You're like, oh, this clicks. tied together. And so it's now all these knowledge from you've gained from other people's lives that you can tie into conversations you're having in a real life situation. And I think that's like the passion I've started to find for the word right now. Like the passion I find for the word and the truth, and like reading it every day. It's like, man, like this person, and you can relate to it. And like you memorize the scripture. That's why memorizing scripture is so powerful. It's like, you just talk about something and it's like, let's see, Romans 1 and 2, and then you can recite it, and it's the coolest thing. But that's what you're doing in the self-development sphere, and now also the word as well. So yeah, keep iterating on that.
Yeah, it's like, learning from all these different areas, whether it's like the word, books, podcasts, YouTube videos, other people, it allows you to cross-pollinate ideas and allows you to take those and combine them with your own experiences and turn them into your own. And I think that's so amazing. I mean, we'll dive into this later when we talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you can bring it up now too if you want.
So God creates man in His own image, and He is a creator. So He made us to be creators as well, and like learning all these different things from other people and combining with us allows us to create new things. And, like that is, in essence, like some of the most like godly aspects of man is the ability to create new things for other people.
Yeah. And I would say you're almost just being the person that He knows you to be. Because like if you start to not be that full person, or like be that person that like teaches yourself in the mirror, or like for me it was like be that person who like liked wearing Young LA, or be that person who likes to watch anime, or like whatever. It's like for the longest time I didn't like express the things I liked, and it's like, dude, those are the things that make me, and those are the things that God, like, He creates you to be a certain way. And if you're like hiding those things from other people, it's like, man, you're not confident in yourself, one. And it's like two, at a time when I like didn't like the person I was in the mirror, because that kind of stemmed from it. If I didn't like the person in the mirror, I couldn't go walk confidently into a room and say, yeah, these are the things I like. And in turn, it's like, well, one, not liking yourself in the mirror, well, that's kind of like, the devil loves that. He loves that. When we had a service about that from JP Pacluda, which amazing service, best service I've ever been in. He talks about the armor of God, Ephesians 10 through 18, something I'm going to get really deep rooted in. It's about spiritual warfare as well. But anyways, the devil likes when you don't like the person in the mirror. But dude, when I started walking with confidence and being able to be my own self, it's like, then I can start affecting the people in real ways. And so it's like you said, so now I like the person in the mirror, and now it's like I have confidence, and like the people who don't like me are just gonna not like me, and so now I can like the things I like and walk into a room confidently wearing what I wear, do what I do. And so that relates to this cross. What do you call it? Cross
pollination, like
cross pollination of all these different things. So now you take the self-improvement books you've read, and now you take the word, the truth, and then you combine that with your life experiences. And so now it's like you're going to be able to relate on a whole nother level with the people. So for me, it's like before I gave my life to Christ, I was kind of caught up in this college world where the hookup culture, in a sense, and going out and drinking. It's like God, like, yes, I wasn't living a life that it was rooted in sin, but I can relate to others. And man, I was talking to someone the other day, and it's like I wasn't fulfilled. I was drinking, I was whatever, I was going out, and man, I'm the most fulfilled, joy-filled I've ever been right now. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I pretty much try to pull myself away from any sin or any things that like Jesus doesn't like or doesn't abhors, and I'm the most fulfilled I've ever been. And so I can use all these different cross-pollinations of all these different little things, and along with my experiences, and relate to people and reach people that someone else might not, that the pastor or the preacher might not, and then present it in a compassionate way that I was able to say, yeah, I know I'm the most fulfilled, most joy-filled I've ever been, and I don't drink, I don't smoke, whatever. And then that opens up the question, so like what does bring you fulfillment? And then I can share. And so it's like I love just being able to peacefully and just friendly, just be compassionate with one another, empathize with one another, and then that way, dude, you can speak like the truth and recite some scripture and just kind of just be like, yeah, like Jesus is the reason I am the way I am, why I walk into every day, grateful for every day. I'm just so blessed, So
yeah, it's crazy because all of it stems from within ourselves. So it's like we all have areas of our life that we want to improve, whether it's finances, relationships, our faith with our God, and it stems all from within. It all stems from like self-mastery, and it's we have to be we have to learn to be true to ourselves before we can be true to others. And if you look at, everybody has been influenced so much by social media, by culture, and so many people in today's age, especially our generation, tries to be somebody that they're not. And a lot of the time, they end up being what's considered today's culture cringe, where they try to do things, they try to do things in order to seem cool or to, get the likes, get the validation from other people. And people like you and me, instead of seeking the validation from others, we only seek the validation of one person.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot of scriptures that talk about, not kind of conforming or living up to people's expectations, but that like just to God's, like, which I don't know the exact scriptures. I wish I knew them, because one of them was in a message we got like months and months ago that stuck with me for a while, but I kind of forgot it. But dude, it's so true. It's like the person that we are, like we can't conform to what other people's expectations are, because basically, you will be cringe if you're trying to be someone else, because it's not you. And so that's like the biggest thing. Like, I've made some content where I'm like, dang, that's kind of cringe. And that kind of just shows you, like, content's not for everyone. Making content's not for everyone, but that's like a passion of mine, man. I don't think I've shared this story on here. I think maybe it was you I was talking to the other day. Maybe not. But I was like, during 75 Hard, I was like, 2-3 months into this job, and I was posting every day for a piece of content for 75 Hard, and someone commented on like day 20 and was like, man, I'm watching every single day of your 75 Hard while I'm doing it. Like, I'm playing every day when I do it to inspire me to keep pushing through. And he was like, but I failed. But he's like, now I'm going to go back and do it again and watch every one of your videos on the day I do it. And I was like, man, that comment right there, that made my day. That gave me more value in one comment on one YouTube short that reached like, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred people, and only like maybe 3 people liked it. But that one comment gave me more value than my job has for the last 3 months. And so that, coupled with the self-improvement process, and now my spiritual growth has been like almost exponential, I would say. All those things coupled to like making a kind of content that I landed on that was authentically me. There's no cringe, man. Like, if someone watches this and they're like, oh, Palmer, like, you're cringe, I'm like, okay, like, I'm just being me. So if you don't like me, that's fine. But I look at this content and I love it, man. I'll be editing a clip and I'm like, man, I like that clip. Like, it's good. I don't look at it and cringe. Whereas I have made content where it's like, okay, I put a little motivational quote of me lifting weights and then another motivational quote. And some people might love that. It's not cringe to them. But for me, I was like, man, that's not the kind of content I want to create. If that makes sense. So that's a lot, but I'm going to lead us into the next subject. So you've been creating in a sense. So share a little bit what you're being called to do, what you want to share, and that kind of first creation that we're going to take a look at after this podcast.
Yeah. So, it kind of stemmed a little bit from high school, I guess. So I was in like a program in high school where it was like hyper accelerated like learning. So like we took we took 3 periods of the day and then split them into 6 different classes. And I did like a ton of writing in high school, and I got pretty good at it. And I learned through that I was good at writing, and I tried to take that and start, like my own like copywriting and marketing business, but that, it failed. And I took,
I love that. Wait, let me stop you. See, I love how he just said like it failed, because like a lot of people would never get on here and admit that it failed, but it led them to the next thing. So sorry, keep going.
Yeah. And I knew that like doing that wasn't what I was meant to do. And, I'm having this realization where I take, the skill of writing with, teaching, and I take that and I turn that into content where it's, written form, and I take that writing and maybe I can turn it into a script for a YouTube video. And I turn that writing into, the structure for me to teach. And so what I'm doing now is I'm writing, newsletters and blogs, and then turning those into raw YouTube videos and turning those into tweets. Like the platform that I'm most engaged on is probably Twitter, just because it's so good for anybody who's writing, and it allows you to, get your thoughts out. And writing has been something that's allowed me to, flesh out my ideas and create clear thinking. And it's also like, anybody who speaks or reads English is, able to learn from that.
Yeah, it's a quick impact through social media, which there's the negatives and positives, which I don't want to dive into right now because we could go into that forever. But basically, it's a quick impact where I know Hormozy talks about it. Like, he's like, the things I tweet aren't because I'm telling people, like, do this, do that. It's like a journal of mine. Like, he's like, these are things I'm thinking to myself, and I tweet them to look back at them. And so I think if you can use a lot of that, because, and it's like, because you look in the mirror and you're like, I'm teaching myself these things. And a lot of the time, the person you're teaching or the person you're going to teach the best is that person from 2 years ago, or that even just that person now. You have a realization, man, like, let me teach myself that, or write it down and jot it down. And so you were saying, like, I teach myself things in the mirror. What's the difference if I just throw a camera instead of the mirror? Like, that's the way you're going to really get a message across or a lesson across, is when you're really you really want to teach yourself that thing, just throwing a camera up, the best you can just get normalized, because people are going to feel like, man, he's really, and same thing with here. So like for me, I found out I really enjoy deep conversations with people, and that's what a podcast literally is. I mean, some not, but like this one, yeah, that's what it's tailoring to. And so now I just throw up a camera, and it's just me, and it's just like, that's why I wanted to get even less serious. And like, if I mess up or say, like, stutter or anything like that, it's just me. And I think that's a comforting thing. But I think that's how you're going to learn the best, or like teach people the best, is like, oh, this guy's like, he's talking to me, because you are talking to them because you're talking to yourself. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's like that drives the point home. It's it's teaching things to the person you were yesterday, and so we may not realize it, you may not realize it, but we all have like knowledge, we all have lessons, we all have struggles that we've overcome that other people in this world are facing too, and we want to they want to be
taught by someone that's faced those challenges.
Yeah, they like to know that they're not alone. And like we've the gift of social media and of communication to share our stories and how we've overcome that other people can use to help in their lives. And like, to drive this point home, a lot of people have the mental roadblock of like, I can't teach online, I can't create content, I'm not like an expert.
But they don't really dive into their authentic self, or like they don't know that person yet. Because everyone has a special story to share if you really dive into it.
Yeah, and it's you ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can? It's about
who's the like starring in it?
Leo DiCaprio.
I don't think I have.
So it's about this scam artist by the name of Frank Abagnale, and the point that I'm talking about is, so he taught at BYU an advanced sociology course, even though he didn't have any sort of background or degree in sociology. And when they caught him, they asked, how were you able to teach an entire semester of students? And he said all I had to do was be one chapter ahead of the students.
Oh, and so, dude, I've used this analogy on this podcast, like the steps thing. Like,
yeah.
You might feel like, oh, like, I'm not that far in, I don't know that much, but you might be step 2, and someone that's at step 1 can learn from you. Like,
exactly.
That's the exact metaphor. And then it's also like the same thing we talked about earlier. God doesn't qualify, or he doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So all this is just tying into one. But yeah, keep going. So into the
it's
he teaches this class.
Yeah, and it's just like, the whole idea is that, like, we see all these influencers online that have, the dream life, the flashy cars, all that idealistic stuff, but we don't relate to them. The people that we relate to the most are the people who are only a few steps ahead of us, the people that have gone through what we're facing, and the people who are the most genuine, who can, like, who have gone through that so recently and are able to just give you just raw footage and the raw them.
Yeah, and something I was talking about, this kind of just hit my brain right now. So I was at the coffee shop with Hayden and Maddie the other day, and I think she was hitting like 10K on TikTok, right? And it's funny because it's so true, man. Like, when you're on the come up and when you don't have that K per se, like the 10K, it's like when people see you're getting followed by someone, then they're more likely to follow you. And I don't know why it is, but people love to like really support the people who are up and all the way at the top, like celebrities. Celebrities have these, but there are some that join the journey of the underdog. But oftentimes it's like people are getting behind the bigger celebrities and not as much behind the smaller like creators. I don't know. I think that kind of relates to what you're talking about a little bit. In a sense.
It's like a little bit paradoxical because like people, you know, love watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians and like whatever shows because they like, you know, have that dream idealistic life and people, you know, fantasize about like, oh, I wish I had that. But I feel like, you know, it's
well, at the end of the day, dude, it's all materialistic things.
Exactly.
I forget what it was, but it was like, oh, dude, it was a message today. I think it was literally today. But it's like the materialistic things. Expression. It was expression and meaning. So like heaven brings the meaning and earth. Heaven brings the meaning to earth, and earth brings expression of heaven. And so if you prioritize the material things, then you're basically, it's a meaningless expression, or like your expression, I don't know, but you get what I'm kind of saying. Like basically if you're all material, you're going to be lost of all meaning, man. But like you're going to be expression like, oh, I got money, I got this, but at the like deep rooted, like what's the meaning of it all? So like and I want to be very clear. Radiant makes this clear, which I love, but like God doesn't call us to like be poor. He like actually wants us to prosper, because in return, when you prosper and if you're tithing, you're going to be able to give more back to God's kingdom and work in more ways in his kingdom, because you can then like fuel his mission and, you know, reach people and move more people towards eternity. So he wants us to prosper, but it's like the focus is, okay, is my first 10% going to the Lord? Is my time? Am I moving people toward eternity? Am I making disciples? All these like generic wills of God, are you kind of checking those off? And then it's like, now you can, you know, if you have some money for the car, do that, but don't make it your master. And so that's what I think you're saying, is people are all looking at these Kardashians like, man, they have this car, man, they have this, but look at their family lives and like look at their marriages, and it's like, does anyone really want that? I mean, you can say maybe yeah, but deep down you get into that, and it's like, if you base your life off material things, it's never gonna be good, man.
Yeah, like so many of those, you know, idealistic lives, you see they end up in divorces, and when it's not
Tom Brady, boom.
Yeah, when it's not like built on faith, it you know, it shrivels. And you know, we talked about this, you know, you can't serve two masters at one, and it's almost like so many people put those materialistic things as their master. And Christ says this too. It said, what does a man have to gain when he gains the whole world but loses his soul in the process? And we want to be able to, you know, kindle our faith in our soul even when we're at the lowest, so that whatever life throws at us, if life does give us that abundance, we want to be able to be rooted in faith so that doesn't become our master.
Yeah, and like you don't get proud in the process, because it talks about, I think it's in Samuel, where King Saul, the first king before David, where he was loyal to the Lord, but until he started to prosper, his name started to spread, and when God told him to kill, I think it was some king that had taken over Israel, and they were in a battle and whatever. They won the battle. This isn't exact. I think it's a little off, but basically he won the battle, and they said, you know, kill the sacrifices or kill the like livestock and also kill the other king, but he left the king alive, and he made burnt offerings of the sacrifices, and the Lord said, no, that's not what I commanded of you. And so Saul got prideful, and he didn't listen to what the Lord commanded, but said, oh, I can do better. I can make these livestock into burnt offerings. And the Lord said, I didn't ask you to make burnt offerings. I said to like kill them all, like kill the livestock. And so he got prideful in return of becoming king and like people knowing his name. And I think it's easy to do that when we get that abundance. Like let's say this. If you're not rooted in your faith, if you're doing something and your business starts prospering and like, you know, God's first, but then when you win, it's like, oh, this is all because of me, man. It's like you get prideful, and it's like that's something that I think if you can get deep rooted in your faith and just recognize God works in great ways and He's provided these things. Yeah,
I actually saw. I mean, like the Book of Job's all about this. Like Job is like. He has everything. He has like his wife,
kids.
Yeah, he has like all this wealth, and God tests him, and everything that he has just is destroyed. His family's killed. His wife is killed.
Yeah, because the devil said, like, let me see if I can make like test him, pretty much.
Yeah,
and took it all away.
Exactly. And it's like, if you're not rooted in faith, like, all these materialistic things will eventually, it doesn't matter. Like, it'll all, like, it'll be gone at the end of the day. And it's like, if you're not rooted in faith, like, it doesn't matter if, you have them or not. Like, I forget where I was going with this, but, like, yeah, you need to be able to, like, give your thanks to God even when at your lowest or at your highest, because, if you become prideful, like, God could take that away so quickly.
Yeah, so even like the identity in sports. So this is something I don't love using this example, but it's so true. Like, going back to Matthew 7:24-27, building your house on the rock, which is the Lord, versus building your house on sand, which is anything else. It's like, God forbid, you get married, or like, just saying you in a general sense, like, you get married or you have kids, and like something happens, and someone moves to attorney quicker, something happens and you lose that person. If your identity is rooted in your family or in your wife or anything else first, dude, anything can get taken away, and that's going to shake that ground, because you're on sand if something's first before the Lord. But if the Lord's your rock, yeah, you're going to go through hard times, but you can always bring those prayers and those thoughts and those reflections to the Lord, and you're going to get through it. But if it's on something else, man, especially if, I think we find as kids, as like athletes, as I was in golf, when your identity, and my faith wasn't big back, it was probably almost non-existent back then, but when it's all in the sport or sports or being an athlete, and that gets ripped away, that's all you've been told from the age you were, if you're not rooted in the church or a family that's going, living as a Christian lifestyle and really kind of in their faith together. Then when that gets pulled away from you, it's like, what is there? You're like, yeah, I have my family still, but all my time from every week was in this sport. And now that gets ripped away. And then I think a lot of athletes end up going into the gym, and then I think stewarding your body is super important, but you can also get way too into it to where you make that your master. Because I did for a while, like, everything I ate, everything, and you start tracking, and that's hours a day. And it's so, I feel like we're going almost into a rabbit hole, so we might have to pull it back out. But any kind of thoughts finishing on that, where it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that, just how, like, important it is to, like, keep your roots in faith. And I guess, like, tying it back to Job, like, like, everything gets better at the end of the day, like, after, like, he loses it all. So
he restores his faith in God. He, like, fully trusts him with everything, and then God, like, replenish, like, he has more kids and his wealth comes back, and I think it's actually more than before.
Yeah,
right?
It's like much better than, I think, it's like much more than before. But it's the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, he brought up this concept. It was like, death, I forget the exact quote, but he said, death removes all things that aren't real. And it's like, death removes all material possessions. It removes all things that are on this earth. It removes, like, our body. And it's like, the only thing that remains is, like, our soul and our faith with God. And it's like, if you kindle that, even after this life, you'll have that for eternity. Yeah,
do not store up treasures on earth, but I don't know the exact scripture, but like, live for basically the treasure in heaven, which is eternal life. So, man, that kind of, yeah. So I think we didn't even go back to think rich, grow rich, right? But we'll dive into your gym journey a little bit, getting into the gym, and something I'm pretty passionate about is anime. Like, I haven't talked about it, I don't think, at all on this podcast, and I don't know how much more I will, but I love talking about it. So you kind of got into the gym through anime, through, being an athlete and wanting to transition into the gym as an athlete. So that was part 1 of the episode with Matt Ferrone. So tune into this Friday at 5 p.m. to catch part 2, where we dive into a little bit of how he got started lifting, anime in the gym, along with more of his story, and some tips from him. So really good episode there, but excited for this Friday. Tune in.